part two is going to be Before Midnight. Yeah. So
Wow.
we had to, yeah. So basically, we were talking about making these lists, right? And when we decided to do a top five, I said, well, I can't really do the whole Before trilogy. I could do the Before
Mhm.
trilogy if it were a top 10. I could put them all in there, but if it's only a top five, I'm gonna have to settle with my favorite of the
Yeah, it
trilogy.
can't be like a 3, 4, 3, 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, three.
yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, more than half of this list is one movie series. No, so but I thought it'd make it interesting because it's you know, it's you gotta be more. You gotta figure out which one's your favorite, and
Yeah.
my favorite has to be Before Midnight, and there's a few reasons for that. So it's kind of hard to. I mean, basically, for those listening, it's like there's three movies: Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. Each of
Mhm.
them take place 12 years apart, something like that. 11.
9 years.
Oh, okay, 9 years apart. And basically, the first movie, our main character, played by Ethan Hawke, meets a woman on a train. That movie is, just about kind of the beginnings of their relationship. The second movie is, them sort of reuniting 9 years later. Because it was, in the first movie, it's like they're kind of meant for each other, but there's also this big distance kind of problem. Um,
Mhm.
and then in the third movie, basically, they're married finally. Um, the third movie, I think, is my favorite. The, they all work really together consecutively. They all work as a unit. You know what I mean? Like all three of them work together really well as a unit. Where it's like you kind of, I wouldn't. It's like even though Before Midnight's my favorite, I don't want that movie without the other two. Although each of them work on
Mhm.
their own too. That's kind of the crazy thing is you could pluck one of these out and have it be a standalone film and it would work. Whether it's the first, obviously the first one would, the second one would, and the third one would. They would all work on their own, I think. Um, and Before Midnight is very interesting because it's sort of this. I really think so. Like the first movie plays into the sort of young love naivete aspect, the honeymoon aspect of
Mhm.
it. The second one kind of deals with like the second chances sort of thing of like, hey, we really were meant to be together, and it's
Mhm.
kind of this idea of like, hey, you shouldn't just ignore that honeymoon phase. We really had something, and we should have made it work. The
Mhm.
third one is sort of the very mature realization of hey, love is work, and
Mhm.
it's sort of a movie that you watch and you really realize because it's like the characters, they're in a marriage and they really love each other, but there's just a lot of complications. The main character
Mhm.
has a kid from previous marriage.
Mhm.
He's obsessed with his work. His wife, she loves being a mother, but she also feels like, hey, I have other aspirations as well.
Mhm.
And it's very much this realization of love is hard work, and there's more to a relationship than just two people loving each other. Like it's not enough. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I get from that movie is like love doesn't is a piece of the whole. It's a big piece of the
Mhm.
larger whole, but it's not everything.
Right.
There are other things that are separate from the love they have for each other that um, are influencing this relationship and really kind of tarnishing it. And it's a very sobering film. And one of my favorite things is at the beginning of the first movie when these two characters are in their honeymoon phase, the way that they meet is that the main character, played by Ethan Hawke, gets up and moves seats because he's irritated at an older couple fighting near him.
Right.
And that to me was the most brilliant, like,
Hmm.
it's like poetry, it rhymes. It's like that was the most brilliant. That's like it actually done right, where that was the
Hmm.
most brilliant kind of full circle thing of, oh
Hmm.
shit, and before
Now they're
midnight,
the old
they're
couple.
now
Yeah.
the old couple fighting.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just kind of, and I don't think the before midnight movie, because I remember watching that with this girl, um and her kind of saying like, oh, I didn't like that because it's like really, you know um nihilistic, and it feels like cynical. And I don't
Hmm.
think the movie is saying that this is the fate of every couple. I think that's the
No.
wrong message to get from that movie. That's kind of like that whole red pill thing that I think is bullshit. But it's
Hmm.
it's sort of a reality of like, you have to be aware of these things that are chipping away insidiously
Right.
day by
It's
day,
right.
that
It's a healthy
are
thing
going,
to
yeah,
have
that are
that.
going to tarnish your relationship regardless of how much you love each other. It's going to have an effect. And I think that's sort of what is really being said in that movie. And
Right.
when you watch that movie, like, I think that it ultimately has a sort of a positive outlook of like, hey, like, love can triumph over all of these sort
Right.
of quote unquote earthly complications.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, anything you want to say about that movie?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think it's one of those things like you said, where with this film, I think this film is like a very healthy film
Yeah.
in the sense that it's not. I disagree with the idea of this film being cynical, because I think it's the opposite. I think it's just kind of trying to give people hope. And I think you don't give people hope through idealism. I think you give people hope through drama and just kind of
Yeah.
showing people like you know you can overcome these things and these characters despite the the surmounting amount of like you said, just like things kind of chipping at them or negativity or this and that and the other thing. It's like ultimately, if you are willing to put in the work, you can surpass these things. You can
Exactly.
kind of go, you can get past them. And it's fascinating because I know people were clamoring for there to be like a fourth film, and it's like, why even?
No, it's a
Like I feel like this
perfect
is enough.
trilogy. Yeah. What are
It's
they
a
going to
perfect
be like?
trilogy
People,
because
old people, like, it's like this was
right,
this
it's
was
like
the final kind of
yeah,
stage
like
of a relationship.
I feel like what would be like a cool thing to do for Linklater, like the director of this film, would be for him to make a movie in which like maybe these characters have like a cameo or they're in the
Yeah.
background and it is Ethan Hawke and her and you're like, oh, there they are, because it's like at this point in time I feel like you've exhausted the thematic idea here at hand with this last film, like you said, showcasing like nothing's perfect in the world, and the number one thing is that you're willing to put in the work and that you have these feelings and you're able, and you're willing and able to hold on to them. Um, so yeah, I think it is like I think it ultimately is like a very positive movie.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. And just to clarify, like, yeah, I don't think the movie's cynical either. That's
yeah,
what.
no, I know.
Okay,
You
just
said
making
that
sure.
that person said that. Yeah,
Yeah, the person I watched
and
it.
I'm arguing against that,
Yeah,
like that person's mindset, from all those years ago.
exactly. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So no, I agree. And like the other movies, the dialogue is riveting.
10 out of 10. It doesn't
Yeah,
get better than this
yeah.
movie.
And the fight that they have, the argument
Yeah,
that they have, and the way it sort
yeah,
of, there's peaks and valleys in their argument, and how the argument will kind of stop, and they'll start talking normally again, and then it ramps up again. So realistic.
mhm,
As someone who
yeah,
has
perfect. Yeah,
had girlfriends where we've
yeah,
argued, and
yeah,
who's heard other couples argue, spot
yeah,
on. Like,
spot on.
so fucking realistic. It's
Yeah,
exactly how it goes, where it's like there's a ramping up and there's a big argument, and then it sort of like dies down, and it's like, yeah, I guess I guess I just feel this way. Oh yeah, no, I feel that way. And then one person says
Yeah.
like one wrong thing in there. Then it's just like,
Here we go.
then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's how you feel. Then it just
Yeah.
starts up again. It's so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my favorite of the Before trilogy because of everything you just said. It's like it's a very um sobering yet hopeful film of like, hey, listen,
Absolutely.
like love isn't all sunshine and roses, but it can triumph if you really love each other and if the person is really worth it. You
Mhm.
may, not will, but may be able to overcome
Right.
certain obstacles because it's
And also
just the
the
reality. There is children from other marriages,
mhm.
finances,
Right.
where we want to
Work.
live,
Mhm.
work. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Jealousy. There's so many things. So many things can
Yeah.
change. And I mean, I think what is it like in some crazy number, 70%, 80, something crazy. It's like of divorces, it's like money is cited as a primary factor, something like that. I
Mhm.
forget what the statistic is. At least half, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, I think you were about to say something else about it.
Ah, I forgot.
Okay.